My birthday cake was still cold inside its box. The apartment I'd just come home to was quiet. The sound of taxis passing outside felt strangely distant. I left my leather briefcase on the floor. I stood there in my coat, staring at the cake, a small shortcake with a single strawberry on top, just for one. For over 20 years, I'd had no memory of being celebrated by my family. This had become my yearly ritual. I remembered this morning at the bakery. The bell had chimed as I walked in. The sweet smell of fresh pastries filled the air. Behind the counter, a young woman with flour-dusted hands had smiled at me. "Special occasion," she'd asked while boxing up the cake. I'd hesitated. The truth felt too pathetic to say out loud. "Just for me," I'd finally answered. Her smile had softened with something that looked like pity. "Well, I hope it's delicious." I'd paid quickly and left. The whole walk to my car, I'd felt the weight of that small box. Not just the cake itself, but everything it represented. 32 years of being the afterthought, the backup plan, the daughter who didn't quite matter enough. I remembered being 7 years old. Mom had promised to make my favorite chocolate cake, but that afternoon, Blake had won his spelling bee. By the time evening came, Mom was too tired from celebrating him. "We'll do yours this weekend," she'd said. That weekend never came. I remembered turning 16, the age when other girls got sweet 16 parties. My parents had taken Blake to tour boarding schools that same week. I'd spent my birthday with my math homework and a store-bought cupcake. I remembered being 25. I'd been promoted to account manager, the youngest in my company's history. I'd called home, excited to share the news. Dad had been in the middle of helping Blake prepare for a job interview. "That's nice, Olivia. We'll talk later." We never did. My phone screen was blank. No notifications. No calls. It was as if no one in the entire world remembered I existed. I turned on the living room light. My shadow stretched long across the beige wall. For a moment, I thought I saw it tremble. I turned around instinctively. That's when I saw it. A photo on Facebook. My father, mother, and brother Blake, all smiling broadly. They were raising champagne glasses. Behind them hung a large banner. "Congratulations, Blake. Congratulations on your promotion." It was posted just 4 hours before my birthday. In that moment, something I'd kept locked deep in my chest crumbled with an audible crash. Today, I turned 32. My family didn't even know. Or maybe they knew, but chose not to care. That night, I never lit the candle on my cake. Instead, I made one decision. I would never let anyone trample on my life again. I would take back my future with my own hands. If you can relate to her situation, what would you do? Stay tuned, because what happens next will completely shock you. The click of my heels carved dry sounds into the marble floor. The lobby of this luxury high-rise in downtown Chicago was nearly empty. It was a Tuesday night. The polished floor reflected the white lights. Only my reflection stood out sharply. I just finished a 14-hour workday. My name is Olivia Harper, 32 years old, senior PR executive at Summit Communications, a firm that handles brands for major companies. Today, I delivered another killer presentation that impressed my client. A campaign strategy for a new product launch, sales targets, publicity angles, risk management. I built it all perfectly. While waiting for the elevator, I scrolled through my phone with my thumb. No notifications, no calls. My messaging apps and email were completely silent. Just because it's your birthday doesn't mean someone has to celebrate you. I told myself this. I wasn't a child. I was a professional adult who managed multi-million-dollar budgets and protected corporate images. Still, the fact that my screen was completely empty on my 32nd birthday left a small hole somewhere in my chest. The elevator doors opened. For a moment, I looked at myself in the mirrored walls. An expensive suit, eyes that couldn't hide their exhaustion. The dark circles under my eyes showed more clearly than my designer lipstick. It felt strange to say, but career-wise, I should have been doing better than anyone in my family. I reached my floor and walked down the hallway. I opened my apartment door. When I flipped the switch in the dark living room, soft ambient lighting came on. My carefully arranged interior emerged from the darkness. Right in the center, on the low table, sat a small white box. A single-serving birthday cake I'd bought myself that morning before work. I walked up to it without even taking off my coat. I opened the lid. One small shortcake. A single strawberry perched apologetically on top. In the middle, a single candle I'd stuck in myself. A birthday so modest it was almost laughable. But this wasn't just this year's story. At some point, my birthday had stopped being a day to spend with family. It had become a day to comfort myself. I dropped my leather briefcase next to the sofa. I kicked off my pumps. As I sank into the soft cushions, all the strength drained from my body. The wall clock showed 11:38 at night. 22 minutes left until my birthday ended. I picked up my phone. Still no new notifications. Just a few messages from friends. Nothing from family. Not from Dad. Not from Mom. Not from my brother Blake. Not one of them. To escape the tightening sensation in my chest, I opened my laptop. I thought checking work emails might distract me from this half-baked expectation and disappointment. The login screen appeared. My finger automatically clicked a different icon. Facebook. I'd only planned to scroll for a few minutes. Just casually browse photos of acquaintances' kids or travel destinations. Pretend the world was peaceful today. My scrolling finger stopped at one particular photo. A familiar face filled the screen. My brother Blake. He was in what looked like a high-end restaurant. He held a champagne glass high. Next to him, Dad had his arm around Blake's shoulder. He wore a proud smile. Mom stood close on the other side in an elegant dress, smiling at the camera. Behind them, a large banner hung on the wall. Congratulations, Blake, on your promotion. The table was covered with dishes. Several relatives appeared in the background. Uncles and aunts. Cousins I hadn't seen in ages. They were all there. The caption bore my father's name. Our star Blake, so proud of your new position. Below that, my mother's comment. The pride of the Harper family has always been this boy. Keep carrying our family's future forward. I noticed the small text in the upper right corner of my phone screen. The timestamp, 4 hours ago. Today, the night of my birthday. I realized something. My family hadn't forgotten my birthday. They'd simply chosen to celebrate something else. As always, something caught in my throat. I scrolled. Another photo appeared. Blake blowing out candles on a cake. Dad patting his shoulder. Mom dabbing at her eyes. Relatives raising their glasses, laughing. The comments read, "Impressive. What a son to be proud of. A man who carries the family name." I slowly closed my laptop. Similar memories flooded my mind, one after another. My 11th birthday. We'd promised to go to a restaurant as a family. I wore my favorite dress and waited at the table for cake, but my family never came home. Blake's debate competition ran unexpectedly long. My birthday dinner was casually postponed until next year. The weekend of my 17th birthday, I was sent to Grandma's house. My parents took Blake on a campus tour of Yale. His future depends on this, Mom said. We can celebrate your birthday anytime. My college graduation day. I was honored with academic distinction. The professor read my name aloud, but at the graduation dinner, Blake suddenly announced his engagement. After that, all conversation centered on him and his fiancée. Talk of my diploma disappeared somewhere during the toast. Just a month ago, the campaign I'd handled at Summit boosted our client sales by over 40%. The office erupted in applause. When I told Dad about it, he only glanced at his watch. Advertising is temporary, he said. Blake's work is different. Finance has real impact. Something small cracked somewhere in my chest. My phone beside the sofa vibrated. A new email notification. I opened it casually. A message had arrived at my work address. The sender was Summit Communications Accounting Department. I stopped blinking when I saw the subject line. Performance bonus payment notice. As I read the message, my lips parted slightly. In recognition of this campaign's results, we are issuing a special bonus of $82,000. I sat back deeply into the sofa and stared at the screen. It took a moment for the number to feel real. An amount I'd never seen before. A genuine evaluation from my company for my achievements. At that moment, my phone vibrated again. My heart gave a small jump when I saw the name on the incoming call screen. It was Mom. Even 4 hours late was fine. Maybe she'd say, "Happy birthday." Unable to shake that sliver of hope, I pressed the call button. "Hello, Mom." I could tell my voice had brightened slightly. It annoyed me a little. "Olivia, perfect timing." Mom's voice was buoyant. but I immediately knew it was the wrong kind of brightness. It had nothing to do with my birthday. We are planning a party next month for Blake and Victoria's anniversary. I'd like you to help. The hope in my chest deflated like a balloon pierced by something. Help with what? Nothing major. Mom laughed. Catering arrangements, decorations. You're good at that sort of thing. You have such taste. The clock struck midnight. My birthday officially ended. Mom. I deliberately steadied my voice. Do you know what day today was? A moment of silence. I could sense Mom trying to remember something on the other end. Today? A few seconds later, a small voice escaped. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. My head was so full of Blake's promotion. It completely slipped my mind. It slipped your mind. The casualness of it pressed heavily on my chest. Maybe she'd really forgotten. Or maybe she knew, but it had simply dropped off her priority list. Either way, the conclusion was the same. It's fine, I answered. My voice was quieter than I expected. I understand now what matters most to this family. Without understanding what I meant, Mom tried to continue. So, about the party venue. But I pulled the phone away from my ear. I ended the call. Silence returned to the living room. On the table, the single-serving shortcake still waited in its box. The candle remained unlit, like a small soldier awaiting orders. On the sofa, my laptop screen was still open. The number $82,000 was neatly displayed there. I took a slow breath in and let it out. With this money, I could throw Blake's party just as my parents wished. Reserve a luxury venue. Arrange perfect catering. Create an Instagram-worthy night filled with flowers. For my family. For the family's face. But none of those images moved my heart even 1 millimeter. Instead, a completely different image formed in my mind. A place where no one could tell me what to do. A space where I didn't have to please anyone. A room where I could display my achievements my own way. My own territory. Something in my chest clicked into place with an audible snap. I stood up and took the cake from its box. I pulled out the candle. I gently dropped it into the kitchen trash. I didn't need a birthday wish. Choosing for myself was faster than wishing. I took one bite with my fork. I scooped up the strawberry and cream and put it in my mouth. While the sweetness melted on my tongue, different calculations began in my head. $82,000. My career. The rest of my life. A future separated from my family. One that belonged only to me. That night, I made one decision. The next time I sacrificed something, it would never be myself again. The next morning, I pushed open Summit Communications glass doors. The office gleamed in the morning light. Fresh lilies stood in the reception vase. The air outside was cold. Winter was quietly approaching. When I got in the elevator, my reflection in the mirror looked slightly more determined. Yesterday's birthday still stung in my chest, but I no longer wanted to bring emotions into this. The company recognized me, unlike my family. This was a place that saw me. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. As I started checking emails that had arrived overnight, a red notification badge glowed in the corner of my screen. New message. Family group chat. I held my breath. Usually, I was rarely included in the family group chat. What were these people who hadn't even sent me a birthday message now talking about? I hesitated for a moment, but my finger pressed the trackpad on its own. The chat screen opened. The first thing that jumped out at me was a message from Dad. For Blake and Victoria's anniversary gift, Olivia should contribute around $20,000. A sharp pain shot through my chest. Then Mom's message. She got a bonus, so she can spend a little on family. She's never done anything for us before. Now's the time to step up. My hands shook. $20,000. For family. Never done anything. The words displayed on the screen spoke more eloquently than anything else. They only saw me as a convenient wallet. Below the message, Blake's read receipt showed. His silence meant he agreed. I closed the screen. My heart began racing as if I'd seen something I shouldn't have. Just then, a cheerful voice came from the office entrance. Olivia, good morning. I turned to see Rachel walking toward me with an armful of documents. A friend from my same year at Summit Communications. My only ally in the office who spoke honestly without pretense. You look pale. What happened? I just looked at my family's chat. Again? Rachel frowned and set the documents on the desk. Show me. I hesitated but handed her my phone. Rachel scrolled quickly. A few seconds later, She let out an exasperated breath. $20,000 for what? That bonus is for your achievements. Why should you spend that much on a family gift? Who knows? And why isn't Blake stopping this? If they're going to call themselves family, shouldn't that be the first thing? Rachel's words were right, but a colder truth remained in my chest. Blake has always had everything handed to him. College, job, all with family support. I've built everything, even my own room, without relying on anyone. Exactly. You got here on your own strength. No one can take that away. Rachel lightly touched my shoulder. Just then, the intercom rang. Olivia, CEO Marcus wants to see you in the conference room. Rachel brought the news. I took a deep breath and headed to the conference room. Inside the glass-walled meeting room, Marcus Rivera looked at me while operating his tablet. Olivia, the final data from last week's campaign is in. Yes. The results exceeded expectations. Sales up 41%. The client specifically praised you. They said it couldn't have been achieved without your strategy. He smiled and handed me a printed report. This is why I gave you that bonus. It was the right call. Warmth spread in my chest. Words of pride and trust I'd never heard from my family. Thank you. I'm the one who should thank you. I have high expectations. When I left the conference room, Rachel was waiting with her arms crossed. See, there are people in this world who value you more than family does. I could only laugh, but then my phone vibrated. An incoming call. Blake's name. I felt a bad premonition as I answered. Olivia, Apex Innovations CMO, is coming to dinner tomorrow. Can you introduce us? It's an important investment target. I took a deep breath. If you want business connections, make a formal request. We're family. We should help each other. Then shouldn't celebrating my birthday come first? Silence. I'm sorry, but I'm asking now. If Apex Innovations CMO comes, it'll mean huge profits for my company. I closed my eyes and pressed my hand to my forehead. Fine. I'll think about it. I answered vaguely and hung up. The phone's vibration stopped. All that remained was fatigue and an indescribable emptiness. I looked down at the city from the office window. Evening light illuminated the buildings. Golden reflections spread across the glass surfaces. That's when I realized something. Here, there were people who recognized me, a place where I was valued. So why did one word from my family shake me so much? A week later, I stood in front of my parents' estate. The white mansion loomed against the evening light. The manicured lawn stretched out, the flower beds lining the stone path. I'd grown up here, but I'd never felt I belonged. I pressed the doorbell. My mother opened the door. Her smile looked prepared. Olivia, we've been waiting. I walked past her into the entryway. Dad stood in the living room. He had a glass of wine in hand. Let's make this quick. His tone made it clear he saw this as an obligation, not a family gathering. Helping us with Blake would benefit you too, Mom said cheerfully. My chest felt tight. I came to talk. That's all. What about my bonus? And what do you expect from me? Dad set down his glass. His expression hardened. Your bonus? That's yours, of course. But family supports each other. Contributing to Blake's anniversary party is only natural. $20,000 is natural? Mom's smile stiffened. You've always been independent. This is your chance to show you care about family. I took a deep breath. I've always cared. But caring goes both ways. The room fell silent. Blake entered from the hallway. He looked uncomfortable. Olivia, we just want to celebrate together. Celebrate what? Your success? Always yours? My words hung in the air. Dad's face flushed. Don't be selfish. Family comes first. That's basic responsibility. Then why didn't family come first on my birthday? The words escaped before I could stop them. Mom's eyes widened. Your birthday. We apologized for that already. You said it slipped your mind. That's not an apology. It's an excuse. I pulled my phone from my bag. I showed them the Facebook post. This was posted 4 hours before midnight on my birthday. The whole family was there, celebrating Blake. Nobody remembered me. Dad looked away. This isn't about a birthday. It's about priorities. Exactly, I said quietly. And I've never been one. The silence was deafening. I stood up. I'm not contributing to the party. Use your own money. Mom's voice rose. How can you say that? We're family. Then treat me like family. I walked toward the door. Dad's voice stopped me. "If you walk out that door, don't expect anything from us again." I turned back. "I stopped expecting things from you a long time ago." I closed the door behind me. The night air touched my cheek. The cold helped me breathe easier. In the taxi ride home, I looked out at the city lights streaming past. A small fire ignited deep in my chest. Not anger or sadness. Something quieter. Something stronger. That night marked the first time I deliberately distanced myself from my family. I never knew how much lightness came from not expecting anything. In the swaying car, I quietly gripped my phone. From now on, the only person responsible for protecting me was myself, and for the first time, I felt proud of that. The next morning, on my way to the office, I turned off my phone. Last night's family dinner wouldn't leave my mind. I didn't have the courage to hear those words again. "You've always been difficult. Put family first." If I absorbed those words again, yesterday's resolution would surely waver. My reflection in the train window looked quieter and stronger than I expected. For 32 years, my features had been shaped by accommodating my family's convenience. Now they were slowly transforming into something else. When I breathed in, the faint pain in my chest actually helped straighten my spine. The morning was filled with meetings. By the time my online client meeting ended, the performance report from the project Marcus had praised was circulating. Messages flew back and forth among colleagues. I sent brief replies and drank coffee in the break room while gazing out the window. Suddenly, last night's emotions resurfaced. That feeling of liberation when I left that house. When the cold night wind stung my cheeks, the hard lump in my chest felt like it was peeling away with a sound. Where should I go from here? As if answering my murmur, something emerged quietly in my chest. My own place. My own territory. A space no one could invade. That afternoon after work, I stopped at a cafe. I set a warm latte on the table and opened my laptop. I intended to open work documents as usual, but for some reason, my finger moved to the search bar. Lake Property, Michigan. The listed properties made my chest warm. Houses with wide windows overlooking the lake. Houses with wooden decks. Houses surrounded by tall pine trees with quietness. One house particularly caught my eye. The photo showed a wooden deck lit by pale sunset. The lake surface was calm as a mirror. The price was $365,000. Not cheap, but not unreachable. As if my heart had moved ahead of me, I typed my name into the inquiry form. I pressed send. Staring at the submission confirmation on the screen, I exhaled deeply. At my family's dinner table, the words "for myself" had been treated like unforgivable selfishness. But now it was different. Taking control of my own life wasn't selfishness. It was necessary for survival. The next day after work, the real estate company contacted me. "We can arrange a viewing. How about the day after tomorrow afternoon?" "I'll be there," I answered on the spot. On viewing day, I drove to the suburbs. After passing through a forest road, the lake spread out in a small clearing. The blue, clear water scattered light like shattered sun. Following the woman who was guiding me, I stood in front of the house. My chest suddenly grew hot. White exterior walls with wood accents. Behind the house, a wide deck extending to the lake. "This is." The words leaked out on their own. My body trembled faintly, as if my heart had known this place. "The owner has already moved to another state and is eager to sell," the agent said. "If terms are good, we can contract immediately." I nodded slowly and toured inside. A spacious living room. A stone fireplace. Large windows facing the lake. A simple but warm kitchen. Up the stairs, a quiet master bedroom. It also had windows overlooking the lake. "I want this." My heart's voice didn't hesitate, even with the wounds from my family still fresh. The moment I stepped into this house, I felt like I had a center that belonged only to me, a place no one could touch. "I'll buy it." The words that came from my mouth were clearer than I expected. The agent blinked in slight surprise, then answered with a smile. "I'll prepare the paperwork." On the drive back from the viewing, I stopped the car and looked at the lake. The water surface absorbed the sunset colors. It swayed between orange and blue. The noise of family and work, the thoughts I'd suppressed for years, it all felt distant. Gazing at the lake's stillness, the restlessness in my chest gradually lost its form. This place was a blank space my family had never tainted. Over these past days, I'd been hurt by my family. I'd felt irritated, sad, angry, and I'd arrived at quiet determination. All of it seemed to dissolve in the lake breeze. I felt like I'd finally obtained for myself the place to return to I'd wanted as a child. A few days later, the loan was approved. The contract day arrived. My hand trembled slightly as I held the pen, but the trembling was closer to liberation than fear. With each signature on paper, I felt like old chains were falling away one by one. That evening, I drove to the lake house with a single bag of essentials. The keys felt heavy in my hand, not from their weight, but from what they represented: freedom, choice, a new beginning. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was empty except for the furniture the previous owner had left. But the emptiness didn't feel lonely. It felt full of possibility. I walked straight to the stone fireplace. I'd never built a fire before. My apartment in Chicago had central heating. But tonight, I wanted to do this myself. I wanted to create warmth with my own hands. It took 20 minutes and several false starts. But finally, the kindling caught. Flames began to dance. Orange light flickered across the walls. I sat on the floor in front of the fire. The warmth touched my face. Outside the windows, darkness had fallen over the lake, but I could still hear the gentle sound of water lapping against the shore. My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 texts from Dad, 1 voicemail from Blake. I turned the phone face down without listening. For the first time in my life, I chose silence over obligation. I chose peace over performance. I chose myself over them. Something warm rolled down my cheek, then another. I was crying. But these weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of release, of finally letting go of 32 years of trying to be enough for people who would never see me. I pulled a blanket around my shoulders. The fire crackled softly. The lake whispered outside. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. "This is home," I whispered to the empty room. "This is finally home." The words echoed softly and faded into the warmth, but their truth remained, solid, unshakable. Mine. On the way home, I returned to my usual apartment. I looked at the unit 3 floors down. Mrs. Patterson's kind smile floated up. I felt like she was saying, "Well done." My life had finally returned into my own hands. Back home on the sofa, the city lights outside the window looked blurred. In a few days, that lake house would become my place. Mine alone. A space no one could take away. No one could interfere with. That night, I truly slept for the first time. Just before falling asleep, I whispered in my heart, "I won't choose for anyone else anymore. From now on, everything is for myself." The words were quiet, but like a powerful new map, they sank deep into my chest. The weight of the 3 photo albums I held in both hands contained more than just paper. With each step up the stone stairs to the entrance, old pain washed over my chest like waves. The shape of family that had accumulated for 32 years was finally about to transform behind that door. I pressed the doorbell. Like a signal, footsteps echoed from inside the mansion. The door opened. Dad stood there like a guardian statue. "You're late." I checked my watch. 3 minutes early. But in Dad's world, I was apparently still wrong. I nodded silently and entered. The familiar wide hall, the scent of lilies in the large vase, the overly perfect air. All of it emphasized the fact that I'd never belonged here. Mom stood at the living room entrance. She held a tissue, tears only on the surface, the kind that would never wet her cheeks. "Olivia." We were worried. I was no longer shaken by that tone. Without answering, I walked to the dining room, still holding the albums. In the center of the room, a silver candlestick sat on the table. The tablecloth was pale cream, the expensive kind Mom only used for special nights. As if she wanted to stage that she was treating me specially tonight. Blake was already seated. He saw the albums in my hands. His expression stiffened for a moment. He alone sensed that tonight's atmosphere wasn't normal. I didn't sit. I gently placed the albums in the center of the table. Dad frowned in annoyance. "What's that?" "Something I want you to see before we talk," Mom asked with an anxious voice. "Albums? That can wait. It has to be now." I opened the first cover. The first album. Blake's birthday album. With each page I turned, Blake's smiles overflowed. Colorful balloons. Lavish cakes. photos with all the relatives, including grandparents. For his 6th birthday, a big red bicycle. At 11, a surprise party. At 18, Blake holding car keys with our parents looking on proudly. I pointed to one photo. Your 18th birthday. It was extravagant. Dad nodded proudly. Of course. It was Blake's milestone. I turned to another page. Blake at 16. A huge party in the backyard. A live band played in the background. At least 50 guests. A custom cake shaped like a football field because Blake had made the varsity team. This one was expensive, wasn't it? I said quietly. Mom shifted uncomfortably. Well, 16 is special. I turned 14 that same week, I interrupted. My voice remained calm. Do you remember what you did for my 14th birthday? Silence. Let me remind you. You gave me $50 and told me to treat myself to something nice. I bought myself a book. I read it alone in my room while you were all at Blake's party. Dad's jaw tightened. Olivia, you're being dramatic. Am I? I flipped to another page. Blake's 21st birthday. A surprise trip to Vegas. Mom and Dad and Blake, all dressed up in a fancy restaurant. I pulled out my phone and showed them a photo. This is me on my 21st birthday. Alone. In my dorm room. With a grocery store cake. You told me you couldn't visit because Blake needed help moving into his new apartment. His apartment was 30 minutes from campus. My dorm was 4 hours away. Mom's hands began to tremble. Real tears started forming. But still, she tried to justify it. We didn't realize. You never said anything. I shouldn't have needed to say anything. The words burst out before I could stop them. I was your daughter. You should have wanted to be there. I opened the second album with shaking hands. My birthday album. The pages were practically empty. A few photos of me alone. Simple cakes. No family. No celebration. Just me, documenting my own existence because no one else would. Mom covered her mouth. A real sob escaped. Oh, Olivia. I didn't know it was this. This empty? This lonely? I finished for her. How could you not know? You were there. Or rather, you weren't. Dad finally spoke. His voice had lost its usual authority. We thought you were independent. You never complained. Blake needed more attention. Blake wanted more attention, I corrected. There's a difference. And you gave him everything he wanted while I got nothing I needed. I turned to Blake. He'd been silent this whole time, staring at the albums with growing horror. Blake, I said softly, did you know? All those times Mom and Dad missed my birthdays, my graduations, my achievements? Did you ever think about me? His face crumbled. For the first time, I saw genuine remorse. I knew they favored me, but I didn't think. I didn't realize it was this bad. I was selfish. I took everything they gave and never questioned if it was fair to you. His voice broke. I was a coward. I'm your brother. And I stood by and let them erase you. I'm just as guilty as they are. The admission hung in the air. Heavy. True. I reached for the third album. This was the family vacation album. Disney World Europe Grand Canyon. The trips Dad had bragged about. I opened the pages. Photos that should have shown 4 family members only showed 3. I wasn't in them. I wasn't taken on any of these trips. The reasons were always the same. Budget constraints. Too busy. Blake's schedule took priority. My voice was quiet, but that quietness carved uncertainty into Dad's face for the first time. This as well. Explain. At my words, Dad pressed his lips together. Dad, I was the child who never appeared in any family photos. I only wanted to be there when you created moments you could be proud of. But that seat was never prepared for me. Dad's eyelids trembled slightly. It was the gesture he always made when trying to hide his agitation. For the first time in my 32 years, I noticed this. Then I pulled out a single photo I'd placed beside the album. I slid it in front of Dad. A Christmas dinner photo from 3 years ago. In the center of the large table, one empty seat. On the chair, a name card with my name. You sent me this photo and said, it's lonely without you here. But this seat isn't my usual place. It's a guest seat, not where a family member would sit. Why did you deliberately place my name card there? Mom covered her face. I couldn't tell if there were tears. Dad stood from his chair. He looked down at me. What's the point of dredging up the past? What we need now is family unity. Buying that lake house was selfish. Trying to get attention like this. In that instant, something clearly snapped deep in my chest. I don't want attention. I just wanted to be seen. Just once in 32 years. As your child, Dad lost his words. Mom murmured weakly, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean anything bad." Before I knew it, everything revolved around Blake. You could handle everything yourself. So you left me alone? No, it just happened gradually. The excuse was small, helpless, too light to fill years of silence. I took a deep breath. I pushed the albums toward my parents. This is the truth, the history you created. Take it. Olivia, Blake called. I never noticed that you were alone all this time in my shadow. His voice trembled like a child's. I spoke slowly. The problem is that you didn't notice, even though we're family, even though you were closest to me. Silence fell. I picked up my bag. I pushed back my chair. I won't be bound by your expectations or evaluations anymore. I walked toward the door. I'm restarting my own life. I'll create my own place since I never had one in this family. With my own hands. No one answered my words. When I closed the heavy front door, I heard the sound of a weight falling from my chest. That night in the car away from the house, I slowly steadied my breathing. The afterglow of anger and sadness remained, but the direction forward was clear. After that, I built up my own time at the lake house. I gradually shaped the rhythm of work and life just for myself. Seasons turned, and before I knew it, a year had passed. On my birthday, candles flickered on the deck overlooking Lake Michigan. No notifications from family, but instead, my friends' laughter surrounded me. Rachel raised a mimosa. Bouquets prepared by colleagues lined the table. The lake's surface was dyed golden. Wind gently caressed my cheek. I took a deep breath. Last year's loneliness and despair had become just memories. Gazing at the candlelight swaying in the lake breeze, I exhaled softly. This past year, I'd secured 3 new client contracts. I'd been honored within the company as most influential PR planner. I now stood in places I never could have reached while chasing my family's shadow, finally standing there on my own strength. Just then, a knock sounded at the door. I turned to see Mom standing with a small cake box. Blake was behind her. Mom smiled faintly. "Olivia, happy birthday. I remembered you like carrot cake." I took the box. I nodded slowly. I hadn't forgiven them, but I wouldn't place them at the center of my life either. I'd keep distance, but I wouldn't close the door completely. That was my answer now. As I breathed in the new scents carried by the lake wind, I raised my glass. "Happy birthday, Olivia." Someone said it, but I couldn't tell whose voice it was. Too many voices. Too warm. The boundaries blurred pleasantly. Last year, I'd wished for someone to celebrate me. This year, I was laughing with people I'd chosen. That alone was more than enough happiness. I laughed, knowing with certainty that my life was beginning here. If you were in Olivia's shoes, what step would you choose? If you remember a moment when you took back your own life, or if you thought of someone important to you, please share in the comments.